Well, hey folks, my name is Brad, and today I have hiked into the mountains of Vermont with my metal detector to see if we can find a few treasures that might be hiding under the ground here. Now, the landowner who invited me here told me that this old stone foundation that's behind me over 100 years ago, at the end of the 1800s, was a sawmill. He also told me that this place has been metal detected dozens of times since the 1970s. So I'm going to do my absolute best, take my time, and see if we can find a few things that those folks may have missed. Now, if this is one of my first videos that you've seen, I post one of these every single Friday. So if you like what you see today, consider subscribing or just come on back next week. I'm gonna get started and see what we can find. Well, it is far thicker in here than I had anticipated. There's the ferns and the saplings makes it quite difficult to swing a metal detector around, but I'm doing my best. And given where we are, it's likely we're going to find lots of iron tools today. So I'm making a point to dig that stuff, and my first target here today is an iron tool, and one that I recognize right away. So you can see here, this has fine metal teeth, and it would have had a handle back here. And this is for grooming horses. It's called a curry comb, and it looks extremely harsh, but not being a horse person myself, having almost no experience around horses, I believe this is for removing the winter coat. So in the springtime, you can use this, and it takes off a bunch of that winter fur that horses have. I'm not sure if it's considered, probably hair, right? And that's what this is. And this is somewhat of a common find around any old place that would have had horses, which a lot of homes had horses, but businesses, logging would have been using oxen and horses to move heavy things. But that's what it is. Always enjoy finding one of these. Somebody held this in their hand. For some reason it wound up in the dirt. Now we have it. That's a cool find. Let's keep searching. Well, I did a bit of wandering from the main cellar to an area that's very barn-like. I'm pretty sure this was the barn or the stable. And my suspicions might have just been confirmed by what I just found right here. This is a horse bit. Now, I know there were different varieties used for different things. The ones that I'm familiar with finding actually have a hinge in the middle. This one clearly does not. I'm not sure if this is still considered a snaffle bit or what kind of bit, but in any case, it went in the horse's mouth and would have been quite important for a working farm or mill like this. Let's see if we can get this one cleaned up. Looks like it's in good enough shape. I'm going to guess end of the 1800s, maybe even early 1900s. Old horse bit. Pretty neat. Well, just a second ago, right in front of the foundation here, I found a wheat penny. And I wasn't going to get the cameras out and show you because it's a wheat penny. It could be fairly modern. Here you can see it. I can't actually make out the date at this very moment, but maybe you can. And then I rechecked the hole, and there was another target down there. I dug it up, and this one is an Indian head cent, which I find so fascinating that in a little coin spill, we can find both a Lincoln penny and an Indian head cent. This clearly came from a time when they had transferred over from this to this, but these were still floating around in circulation. And before I got the cameras out, I rechecked the hole, and there's still more down there. So at least a 3-cent coin spill. We're gonna investigate the rest of them together. Maybe there'll be silver $50 or silver dollars down there. We'll find out together. So it's right here, it sounds like. Yeah, here it is. What is this one going to be? That's another Lincoln. Interesting. Let's check again. More still, maybe. There are nails in here, so it could very well be nails. Look at that. Stuck right to my pinpointer. That is another wheat penny. Let's check again with the metal detector. And it seems like that's it. 4 cents, 3 Lincolns, and 1 Indian. I'm happy with that. No silver coins, but I'm sure the person that lost this back in the very early 1900s would have felt it, would have missed it. Old coin's an old coin. I just found 4 of them. Can't complain about that. Well, I keep saying to myself, all right, not gonna show the camera any more horse stuff. But it's all I seem to be finding today. So you're on this adventure with me. This is the stuff I'm finding, so this is the stuff I'm gonna show you. This is one of the most requested identification items that I can think of. I see online and forums and on Facebook groups, people posting pictures of these things. What is it? Well, this thing is called a hame knob because they attach to a piece of horse stack called a hame. From what I understand, they attach to a collar of like a draft horse and were used to pull heavy stuff, which makes sense why we'd find one of these here. Other than being a fairly common, big, loud brass target we find metal detecting at places like this, it's kind of pretty. And oftentimes I've seen these repurposed to the top of walking sticks, just hung on the wall as a decoration. They are kind of interesting. Years ago, I actually found an entire hame. The big, long, curvy, it was actually mostly made out of metal, which is why I was able to find the whole thing. The wood was gone, but you could certainly tell what it was with all of the rings and everything attached to it, but this is still an interesting find. It sounded amazing on the metal detector, right? Big hunk of brass like this. Horse stuff. Throw it in the bag with the rest of it. See what else we can find here. Well, very much in line with all of the other horse things that I'm finding today, I just found probably the most common horse item we find out here metal detecting, and that is the horseshoe. And for maybe every 10 typical horseshoe-shaped horseshoes we find one of these. As you can tell, has a piece of metal down the bottom, and this is a massive horseshoe. And one of my guilty pleasures, one of the wormholes that I've gone down on YouTube more than once, is reshoeing horses. I don't know what there is about it. It's satisfying, I guess. As I've learned from some of those videos, a bar along the bottom of the horseshoe like that is just to give the horse a little bit more support. Maybe it's having some hoof issues. And this was clearly a working horse being in a place like this. Even the folks back then, end of the 1800s, knew exactly what they were doing when it came to their horse's feet. So that's pretty cool. This one is probably a little bit too far gone to try to save, but I actually do have a horseshoe with the crossbar hanging on my wall because they are just a little bit more interesting than your standard horseshoe. All right, let's see if we can get out of this barn area and find some non-horse related objects. Well, I just said, let's get away from all this horse stuff. I took 3 steps, I got a beautiful target on the metal detector. Thought maybe it was going to be a coin, but it is more horse tack. I've found a lot of jingle bells in my videos recently, so I'm going to keep this relatively short. But what I wanted to point out was the bells that I found recently. They all were from the middle of the 1800s, whereas this one is relatively newer. You can tell because the bottom has this extra step. It's not round, and this top part isn't a loop like we're used to seeing. Everything else about it is the same. It's a bell, went on a horse, but a little bit more modern. Still crushed, just like the old ones usually are. You stepped on maybe by that horseshoe that we found earlier. So probably not going to get this one to ring. The gap here is closed tightly, but You know what it is? Tiny little jingle bell from probably the early 1900s. The ones that are in really nice shape, I actually attach to a strip of leather. They're all on there, and when I shake it, it sounds just like Santa's sleigh. No letters, no numbers. Still a cool find. So I was just metal detecting along this old stone wall. You see all these ferns behind me. Nice open spot. Something folks who metal detect tend to do is if they find a huge piece of iron, it's too heavy to carry around, they'll set it down somewhere, oftentimes on these old stone walls. And I just came across something somebody found before me, and I just had to show it because it's so cool. So I saw this end first on the stone wall, and I said, oh, it's just a big, who knows what, spring for a wagon or something. And it's extremely long. You can see how long it is here. And on this end, we can see that this was a hinge for probably the massive barn door, which, you know, must have been around here somewhere. Maybe it didn't have a stone foundation. I'll have to look around for that. But something that I find so interesting is that this is, you know, imperfect. This was made by a blacksmith, pounded it out, not quite symmetrical. Nail went through the hole. Barn fell down or burnt down or returned to forest, yet still the hinge remains that blacksmith made well over 100 years ago. There's probably several more of these out here somewhere. I may or may not find them, but we saw this one. I'm going to put it back up on the stone wall where I found it because it is indeed too heavy to carry around all day. But I'm glad I got to see it. Glad I got to show you folks handmade art, if you could call it that, of the late 1800s. Well, maybe you can see behind me there is a fallen tree, and I'm right next to the root ball where it uprooted a little bit when it fell. And it is just absolutely covered in stuff. This is what initially caught my eye, which is a little fragment of plate, I would guess. Caissons, W-A something or other. Pretty. I'll take that with me. But if you look around, there's a piece of glass here, piece of glass here. Glass everywhere. Here's a piece of steel. This piece of glass looks melted, which might give us some indication of what happened here, why it's abandoned. Nail. Oh, there's a big piece of metal right here. Didn't notice that at first. And right down here, there were a couple of these. That looks like the top of a mug or a cup of some kind. This is obviously the bottom of a bottle. Bricks right here. You could probably just kind of go through this with a hand shovel and find all kinds of treasures. Maybe that's what I'll end up doing. It's been very slow today. Probably because it's been metal detected so many times in the past. I'm still finding things that those folks missed, but targets are few and far between. But these, they're just laying here, right in plain view. Pretty cool. I just thought that was interesting. Just using your eyes walking around a place like this, if you don't have a metal detector, you can still find interesting things on the surface. So if that's something that interests you, just wandering around an old place like this could be a lot of fun. All right, let's turn the metal detector back on. Go find something. Thunder in the distance. Hopefully it's not coming this way. One thing I haven't found any of today, which is a little bit surprising, is buttons. Given this was a place of business, folks are working hard. Usually they pop those off, but I haven't found any of those until now. And it appears to be, you know, like a two-piece, maybe military button. Could be anything, honestly, but I'm hoping it's a military button. And I'm not sure how old it is because there appears to be fabric attached to the back. try to keep that on there. But there is, hopefully you can see, a back mark, which will help us date it. And the front, I haven't looked at yet. We have here a little rub. I don't recognize it right away. I do see mass. I don't know. Let's get it cleaned off. Figure out what it is. All right, figured it out, and this is an awesome button because, well, I'll tell you the story in a second. North Adams, North Adams, Massachusetts, and at the bottom, police. It's an old police button. I'm not sure quite how old yet. I'm going to have to get that back mark cleaned up. But I lived in North Adams for about 5 years. I went to college in North Adams, bought a house there for a short period of time before returning to Vermont again. But it's extra exciting because the house that I lived in North Adams was where I developed my love for metal detecting. It happened to be an 1850 farmhouse. The first things I ever found came out of that yard, and I actually did find a police button there as well. And here we are, many, many years later, finding another North Adams police button. Up here, of all places. I wonder what they were doing up here. A mystery. That's by far my favorite find of the day. And maybe one of my favorite finds in a while. Fabric still intact too. Incredible. All right, folks, well, I'm gonna call it there. I actually spent more time in the woods metal detecting today than I have in a long time. It's actually gonna be dusk pretty soon. I gotta start hiking out of here if I don't wanna do it with a flashlight. Now, given that this place has been metal detected who knows how many times for the last 50 years, I honestly didn't find a whole lot, but a few things that I did find, I'm pretty pleased with. That police button in particular has special meaning to me, but I also actually found a second one. And when I found that second one, I thought, oh no, the whole policeman is down here, but it was just the two, thankfully. Some of the larger iron things are gone because the landowner swung by on his four-wheeler. We chatted for a while and he took the bigger iron things that I didn't want to carry out. So those aren't here. Let's take a look at it. It's mostly buttons and pennies, but let's look at it anyway. And here we have the small pile of treasures. Most of this stuff I don't think you've even seen because it's just kind of common stuff we find over and over again up here in the mountains. That includes some lamp parts. We have one piece of a harmonica reed plate, a fork, 2 spoon handles, a couple little horse tack buckles. I found a bunch of these today. These are just rivets. You can see that the leather is still intact. I did find a pocket knife with the blade broken off, likely thrown away after the fact. And then front and center here, my favorite finds. We have the jingle bell. I did actually end up finding 6 cents. One more of those is an Indian head penny. So there's 2 Indians and all the rest are wheat cents. Pretty good haul for old pennies today. And then out front, my 2 North Adams Policeman buttons. Can't believe it. Since I found 2, hopefully the landowner will allow me to take one of those home and display it with my other North Adams police button. I had mentioned that I went absolutely all day today. This is all I have to show for it, but to tell you the truth, just one of these makes the day worth it. Well, I want to thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Hopefully I'll see you next week for another adventure out here somewhere in the mountains of Vermont.